Cleveland recently, we had two instances of parents perhaps not living up to their duties. In the case of a woman from Columbus who later turned out to be a child care worker coming up to the Cleveland Zoo for the weekend, she lost her grip on her young son that she was holding over the cheetah pit, and he fell in, broke his leg. The parents dashed in and got him, and the cheetahs did not attack, but she's been charged with child endangering in Cleveland Municipal Court. And in the other, much more seriously, a 1-year-old boy was shot by a 3-year-old relative who somehow got his hands around a loaded gun while the mother of the 1-year-old's back was turned. This happened on the east side of Cleveland. There have been no charges in that case. It's not clear whether there will be, or the origin of the gun, who owned it. We're hoping that will come out. I think we'll be pursuing that. But it raises questions about holding parents accountable. Also, about the fate of a gun safe storage bill that has been proposed every General Assembly for the last few by Cleveland legislator Bill Patman, why that hasn't gone anywhere and perhaps is needed. I'm Elizabeth Sullivan. I direct the editorial board for the Plain Dealer in the Northeast Ohio Media Group. I am joined in today's opinion show by other members of the editorial board, Ted Diadiun, Kevin O'Brien, also noted columnist, Sharon Broussard, and Pete Krouse. And we're going to talk about these issues, and we would welcome your comments in the comments when this is posted online. Kevin, what are your thoughts about this issue? Either the guns or the cheetah,
I guess my thoughts are that you can't. There's nothing you can do legislatively or governmentally to prevent foolishness, laziness, or ignorance. You can make all the laws that you want to punish people after the fact when something tragic happens, but you can't make them smarter or more attentive to their duties. Only hard experience can do that, and a lot of people are resistant to learning even from that. So the hue and cry about the shooting death, which indeed is tragic, I think amounts to a lot of, gee, we wish we could do something, but there really isn't anything practical that we can do, including a safe storage gun bill. Well, the people who would benefit from it are already doing it, and the people who aren't going to benefit from it, there's nothing you can do in the law to make them do it.
It is possible, though, that no charges will be filed against the mother, whomever else was responsible, because we don't have such a law. Such a law would hold an adult accountable for the safe storage of a firearm when there are young children in the house or likely to be in the house. Sharon, what do you think about that?
I happen actually to kind of agree with Kevin. But I guess I'm thinking, on the other hand, with the gun storage bill, even though some people are probably already doing it, it might wake up other people who are saying, this will never happen in my house. My kids already know not to go near guns, which was actually my father's attitude, which unfortunately did work. Nobody was shot and killed. But, that was his attitude. I think that if there had been a law that said...
Fortunately, it did work, right?
Yeah. I think if there had been a law that said you need to store that, my mother would have put pressure on him. He might have put pressure on himself to do that, so that way he wouldn't have to deal with authorities if something happened. So maybe for those who are kind of sleepwalking, thinking that this could never happen to them, it might be a way to ensure that it doesn't by making them follow the law.
The Cleveland Police Chief, Calvin Williams, made a very emotional statement after this 1-year-old boy was killed, talking about the culture of guns and how that's sort of taken over. One of the proposals that you hear about to deal with this is for the gun manufacturers to actually build into weapons these mechanisms by which you can you have to actually be the owner to be able to fire the weapon, or that there are additional safety features that could prevent a child from grabbing a gun and it going off accidentally. What are your thoughts about sort of putting more pressure on the manufacturers?
I don't know much about the technology of how that would work. It sounds like it would be a very difficult thing to do and not fail-safe. And the reason people keep guns around and have them at their disposal is to protect themselves when need be, mostly. And if you had something that might, I don't know how that would work. I think the issue of trying to have a safe storage law is, as Kevin said, after the fact. And I mean, I don't see what good charging these people. I'm sure they feel bad enough, and I don't know what piling on with punishment would do to make them feel any worse. And that's the only time the law kicks in, is after something awful happens. I don't think the people wanted anything like that to happen, and they certainly didn't flout anything. They just were careless, and too often that happens. But I don't see how that would work.
Well,
Pete, do we have a culture of guns, and what should we do about it?
we do have a culture of guns. I mean, clearly there are a lot of people out there who should not possess a gun, either because they don't know how to handle it properly, or because they own the gun to help them in their pursuit of their nefarious deeds. I somewhat agree with Sharon. I think perhaps a gun storage bill could make people more aware. It could help to some degree, but generally speaking, yeah. I mean, it's after the fact. But I do think that obviously there's a lot of people out there that simply they shouldn't have guns, and if they can't, I don't know what you do though. I really don't know what you do to prevent accidents like this from happening, except for continue to tell people and insist that they learn how to handle their guns properly.
Well, there has been great resistance, though, both at a federal level and a state level, to enact any kind of law relating to guns. The gun lobby is very powerful. Is that a problem? Do we think that that's an impediment to trying to corral some of this, illegal trafficking in guns, because we don't have the legislated means to really be able to track these weapons and go after the folks that are peddling them illegally?
Yeah, I think it makes it hard to have a sane and open conversation about it. For example, there was a bill that was being proposed that would do away with, all the lessons that you're supposed to take before you do concealed carry, which, would erode at least some of the protections that there are in concealed carry. So I think every time we try to have an open discussion about this and maybe put a lot of things on the table, for example, even after the shooting at Newtown with all the little first graders killed, and there's still a very mighty resistance to that, which kind of surprised me about just having that conversation. I mean, maybe many of the things that some people on the left who are against guns wouldn't come to pass. Maybe some of the things that people who support guns on the right wouldn't come to pass, but maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle and protect a lot of people along the way, and I just don't see this country doing that yet.
Well, I took a concealed carry course, and they emphasize safe storage and safety very much, and I didn't get any sense that there was an opposition to registering and to try to make sure that guns get in the hands of only people who are responsible. But there's a lot of emphasis on that, and I think that is where the emphasis needs to be, rather than on after the fact laws. I did want to mention, I picked up a couple of statistics before I looked them up, and according to the Center for Disease Control, there's an average of 62 children a year under the age of 14 who are killed in unintentional shootings, which surprised me it was that low, and I think there are other people who dispute that, but I thought that was interesting. 70% of those more responsible storage would have prevented the death. 2/3 of the guns that were involved in the shooting were legally owned, and 57% of them were handguns. So make of that what you will, but I thought those were interesting stats.
We tracked gun statistics in Cuyahoga County last year as part of an editorial board project, and there wasn't a single gun death in the entire year of 2014 in Cuyahoga County that was ruled by the medical examiner as of the end of the year as an accidental shooting. It was all either homicides or suicides.
We're very intentional here in Cuyahoga County. We have reasons for the things that we do.
Well, this, obviously, the statistics for 2015 will be
They'll be different, right.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the reasons, though, that I think Sharon mentioned this is there has been a bill introduced in the General Assembly that would, in fact, roll back or eliminate the training requirement for the concealed carry permit.
I think that's unfortunate.
Okay.
I think my course was like 10 or 12 hours or something like that with the shooting. I think they want to retain the shooting, the proving that you know how to handle it, but they're taking away the classroom work, which I think is a very bad idea. I think they ought to keep that. I learned some things from it. In fact, I went to it again a couple of years later just to renew, and I just think that's something that any responsible gun owner ought to know.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good course, even if you don't intend to carry. There's a lot of good information there, and as Ted said, they emphasize safety over all other things. I think probably in my 12-hour course, 8 hours of it was safety training.
Yeah.
You spend an hour on the range when you're done.
Right. So it sounds like it's worthwhile for any gun owner to take
Absolutely.
that kind of
Absolutely.
training.
Yep.
Is there a financial impediment?
They're
is it
not
expensive?
terribly expensive.
Mine cost $100,
Yeah, same here.
and you know, I mean, if you can afford to go out and buy a gun, and you know, that's money well spent, I
Right.
think.
That is a point where the expense is a point worth raising, and this also gets to the smart guns issue. If you're not a wealthy person and you're living in a neighborhood it's not a wealthy neighborhood and it's a dangerous place, do we want to put financial impediments in the way of those folks when it comes to defending themselves? And the more, you know, if you're going to get a smart gun, what do you get your wife a smart gun too? Do you get your 18-year-old daughter a smart gun too? You're getting into serious money here. And everything that you do to try and make guns more expensive prices people who may need them the most out of the market.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And what
it
about the
becomes a
early
vicious
adopters of smart
a
guns?
vicious
We
cycle.
learn that they don't necessarily
Well,
work really
yeah,
well.
right. Yeah, that's,
Well, it also becomes a vicious cycle, though, because if you predicate all of this on the explosion of illegal guns in poor neighborhoods, which is clearly a driver of this,
Right.
then you can't ever, you know, change that cycle. So
Well, the gun that was involved, we don't know whether it was legally owned or not.
we
The
don't
gun
know.
was
The
involved in
police
shooting,
have
yeah.
not clarified who owned the gun. So
I thought it was
they do have the weapon, though. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that according to the Center for Disease Control, the 2/3 of the guns involved in these accidental shootings of kids were legally owned. I suspect the percentage is much lower in the study we did with the homicides, gun deaths in Cleveland as far as legal ownership.
One of the things that we were very frustrated about, you know, editorially with that series is the city of Cleveland's failure to give us any of the information they actually had about their gun trace data on the guns that were recovered, both from, you know, homicides and suicides, so that you don't really have a window into this issue that you raised.
Yeah.
And it is something that we plan to pursue this year editorially. Are there any last thoughts about this? We're getting close to the end of our time.
No.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in. We really would like to hear, as you probably gathered, there is a general agreement about the extent of the problem, but not on the solution. So we would very much like to hear practical ideas on how to address the plethora of illegal weapons in city neighborhoods that might induce the mother of small children, the aunt of small children, to have a loaded gun in her home if indeed it belonged to her. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week.